Most people have never set foot on an offshore oil rig, but for thousands of workers, these massive steel structures rising from the ocean are their office, their home away from home for weeks at a time. On October 9th, 2000, Gordon Mackey Moffett arrived for just another shift on the Santa Fe Magellan drilling rig, 120 miles east of Aberdeen in the North Sea. He was starting the second week of his 2-week rotation, but by midnight of that same day, something terrible would happen to him. In this video, we're going to show you how modern business practices and the relentless pressure for profit created the conditions for one of the worst workplace tragedies ever documented. At approximately 11:30 p.m., 8 members of sea crew assembled in the rig's tea shack for their pre-shift meeting. These pre-shift meetings were supposed to be about safety, identifying risks, planning the work, making sure everyone went home alive. Gordon Moffett was an assistant derrickman. He'd done this job countless times before, but on this night, a routine maintenance task would turn deadly. The job seemed straightforward enough. Hydraulic hoses needed to be secured to part of the drilling apparatus called the diverter assembly. To reach the attachment points, someone would need to be lowered in a riding sling, basically a harness attached to a winch line, suspended 40 to 50 feet above the blowout preventer deck below. Here's where things start to go wrong. The winch line ran down through a narrow opening in the drill floor known as the mouse hole, a slot barely 10 inches wide. It dropped straight through the deck, down into the area where the crew worked. Up above, the winch operator sat at his controls on the drill deck, but from his position, he couldn't see the mouse hole at all. He was completely blind to whatever was happening beneath him. Every move he made depended entirely on the voice of one man, the banksman, standing on the level below, calling out instructions over the radio. And this is the critical part. No one was actually watching the mouse hole itself. There was no spotter, no extra set of eyes stationed beside that narrow opening where the line entered the deck. The most dangerous point in the entire operation, the point where the cable could snag, catch, or whip, was left completely unmonitored. It was a perfect setup for disaster.
Your mark.
At first, everything went exactly as planned. Moffett was lowered down in the sling, his body rocking gently in the North Sea wind that threaded its way through the steel skeleton of the rig. For nearly an hour, he worked with calm precision, fastening each hydraulic hose to the diverter assembly one by one. Below him, the rest of the crew watched from the BOP deck, just another routine task on another long, cold night shift offshore. When he finished the job, Moffett looked up. Above him, the overhead crane hung motionless, suspended barely 2 feet from his head. And in that moment, he made a choice, one he believed would save everyone a little time, but one that would ultimately cost him everything. He volunteered to swing himself sideways and grab onto the crane while they performed the pressure check. No need to haul him all the way back up. No need to reposition the sling. Just lift him a couple of feet, he'd grab hold, and wait there until the test was done. A small shortcut, and a simple decision. And in that moment, his fate was sealed. The assistant driller gave the order.
Up on your line.
The banksman pressed the transmit button on his radio.
Roger. Up on your line.
He repeated, sending the command to the winch operator sitting blind on the drill deck above. The 5-ton winch hummed to life. The steel cable tightened, and Moffett began to rise, 11 inches per second. That was the winch's pull rate. It doesn't sound like much, but when you're hanging in a harness 40 feet above the deck, every inch feels like a mile. 1 foot up, 2 feet. Moffett was nearly level with the crane when he sensed it. Something wasn't right. The winch wasn't slowing. He was still rising, but too fast and way too far.
Stop!
Moffett shouted. The banksman slammed his thumb against the radio button.
Oh, stop!
He barked, but up above in the winch operator's cabin, nothing. There was no reply, no acknowledgement, just silence. The radio's battery could have died, or had some faulty aerial or some kind of malfunction, but at that moment, it didn't matter. The winch operator heard nothing, and Moffett kept rising. The cable continued to pull steadily and without hesitation. The banksman's calls grew increasingly desperate as he shouted,
"Halt stop! Halt stop!
into the radio, his voice straining with urgency. Within seconds, he was 10 feet above the point where he should have stopped, then 15, then 20. Above him, the underside of the drill deck was drawing closer. A broad, unforgiving sheet of steel with only a single opening in it, the mouse hole.
Stop! Stop! Let me up!
Moffat yelled. His voice had changed. It no longer carried the tone of a routine command. It was absolute fear. The assistant driller rushed to the banksman, grabbed the radio straight out of his hands, and shouted into it himself.
Stop the winch! Stop the bloody winch!
Only static came back. The realization hit him instantly. He looked up at Moffat, still rising, now only about 15 feet from the small opening above, and then he turned and ran. The nearest telephone was 40 feet away. His boots pounded across the metal deck as he sprinted toward it, while behind him, the crew erupted into shouts and frantic motions. Some pointed upward, others stood frozen, unable to process what they were witnessing. The mouse hole was now just 10 feet above Moffat. He reached the phone and grabbed it with shaking hands, nearly dropping the receiver in his panic. The tannoy system was his only hope. It would broadcast across the entire rig. His fingers fumbled over the buttons as he tried to punch in the code.
Stop the winch! Stop the winch!
His voice blasted through the phone, but the thing is, the tannoy had a built-in delay that lasted a few seconds before it would relay the message to the PA system across the whole rig. Down on the BOP deck, the crew could see exactly what was about to happen. Moffat tried desperately to adjust his body, twisting as far as the harness would allow, but he was locked in, suspended by 5 tons of mechanical force pulling him in. The men on the deck turned away, struggling with what they were about to see. The riding sling reached the opening of the mouse hole. What happened next lasted only a few seconds, but it would stay with every witness for the rest of their lives. The harness, with Moffat still inside it, was dragged into an opening that no human body could possibly fit through. The winch did not hesitate or recognize the impossibility of what it was doing. It simply continued pulling, 11 inches per second, with the same cold, mechanical determination. The lower half of Moffat's body was forced through first. Then the winch attempted to forcefully haul the rest of him through an opening that physics itself refused to accommodate. The men below heard the awful grinding, crushing noise that cut sharply through the constant hum of the rig, and then came the screaming, not from Moffat, but from the men who witnessed it. The tannoy message finally played. The winch operator, hearing the panic in the assistant driller's voice, slammed the emergency stop. The cable went slack. But Gordon Moffat was already gone. His body hung partially through the mouse hole, suspended between 2 worlds, the BOP deck below and the drill deck above, where the winch operator sat in shocked confusion. A fellow worker who had been relieved by Moffat earlier that night, who should have been in that harness instead, looked up at the scene. He would later struggle to find words after he saw what was left of Moffat.
We still didn't want to believe it. Just rags. Just bunched up rags, you'd think, looking at it. That's all you could tell yourself it was.
The medical examiner later called it crush asphyxiation, multiple abdominal trauma, and virtual transection. This is basically medical talk to describe a person's body that's nearly been cut in half. The more disturbing and frustrating part of this is how it was preventable. The fatal accident inquiry that followed revealed a cascade of failures that night. The risk assessment meeting that was supposed to identify dangers. Crew members took turns filling out the forms, treating it like paperwork rather than a life-saving exercise. Most had no formal training in risk assessment and were unaware of Santa Fe's own safety bulletin about man-riding operations issued just 8 months earlier. There was confusion about whether supervisors even participated in the safety discussion that night. Some witnesses suggested the risk assessment form was only filled out after Moffat died. Even Sheriff Kieran McClernand, who was leading the inquiry, warned that focusing on form filling distracts from actually thinking through risks. The forms were filed, ignored, then tossed. But the failures ran deeper than that. The contractors who worked on these rigs always had these risks pushed onto them. The Piper Alpha incident made promises of safer systems. But 15 years later, that hadn't stopped basic preventable deaths like the one you just saw. This is typically called precarious employment, where insecurity and risk get pushed down to those least able to refuse them. like contract workers on 2-week rotations, working 12-hour shifts, separated from their families, dependent on their next contract. These workers might notice problems but hesitate to speak up. They fill out safety forms because they have to, not because anyone actually uses them to prevent accidents. That night's specifics were simple and deadly. A failed radio that a check could have caught. No watcher at the mouse hole. A winch operator working blind. Offshore. Small oversights like this kill. Gordon Moffat was experienced and volunteered for the task. He followed the procedures properly, but the systems put in place failed him. Until the industry puts people before profit, this will keep happening. Whether it's in the North Sea, Gulf of Mexico, anywhere. Gordon Mackey Moffat deserved better. They all do. Every worker flying out deserves to know their safety matters and their voice will be heard. Until that's true, lives will be lost, and their stories must be told.